Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session looking at two lamentable tragedies, or Two Tragedies in one by Robert Yarington. It's a double bill. It's a buy one, get one free on murder. The one of the murder of Master Beech, a chandler in Thames Street, and his boy, done by Thomas Merry, spoilers, and the other of a young child murdered in a wood by two ruffians with the consent of his uncle, spoilers as well. Broadly speaking, there are going to be two tragedies in one, two become one, as those great philosophers, the Spice Girls, once said. We're going to be reading through Act 1 through to Act 2, Scene 3 today, before we pause and take stock. And joining us, reading the personification of truth, Fallerio, Williams, and Loney today is...
Hello, my name is Lynn. This is Mrs. Scooter, and I live in the northwestern United States.
And reading Mary and Armenia today is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good, ready to be merry in Hull.
And reading Avarice / Covetousness, as well as Rachael and Pertillo is...
Hi, I'm Nicole, actor in New Jersey. Feeling a little typecast today.
It's coincidence, it was random chance, but I was quite pleased with the randomness of random chance this week. Reading Homicide / Murder, Pandino, Master and Ruffian number 1 is...
Elizabeth Amisu, based in Romford.
Reading Neighbour and Allenso today is...
Hi, Helen Scott, Suffolk.
And reading Beech, Sostrata, Winchester, Maid and Ruffian number 2 is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and apparently I'm going to get murdered today, or tomorrow. I don't know, is that tomorrow? Probably today.
Yeah. How soon will the murders happen? Always something to look forward to in a play with so tidy a name in that sense. It's a play from around 1595. It's a rough date. It was printed in 1601, and we don't know who it was necessarily performed for or by, but we have this text. There are lots of party quirks with the text itself. Some of the names are not particularly stable, and the stage directions are quite quirky in places. There's an awful lot of asides, some of which are clearly ascribed, some of which are not, so just be aware of that. If you see a hyphen, then that probably means there's an aside beginning or ending at some point during that speech. Otherwise, we will, as ever, crash through the text and see how it's going to go. We go into what is effectively an induction scene as enter homicide or murder solus.
Sorry, Rob.
That's all right.
I have in vain passed through each stately street, and blindfold turning of this happy town, for wealth, for peace, and goodly government. Yet can I not find out a mind, a heart, for blood and causeless death to harbour in. They are all bent with virtuous gainful trade, to get their needments for this mortal life, and will not soil their well-addicted hearts with rape, extortion, murder, or the death of friend or foe, to gain an empery. I cannot glut my blood-delighted eye with mangled bodies which do gasp and groan, ready to pass the fair Elysium, nor bath my greedy hand in reeking blood of fathers by their children murdered, when all men else do weep, lament and wail, the sad exploits of fearful tragedies. It glads me so that it delights my heart to add new torment to their bleeding smarts.
Enter Avarice.
But here comes Avarice, as if he sought some busy work for his pernicious thought. Whether so fast all-gripping Avarice?
Why, what carest thou? I seek for one I miss.
I may supply the man you wish to have.
Thou seemst to be a bold, audacious knave. I do not like intruding company that seek to undermine my secrecy.
Mistrust me not, I am thy faithful friend.
Many say so that prove false in the end.
But turn about, and thou wilt know my face.
It may be so, and know thy want of grace. What, homicide, thou art the man I seek. I reconcile me thus upon thy cheek.
And they kiss and embrace.
Hadst thou named blood and damned iniquity, I had forborne to bite so bitterly.
Knowest thou a heart wide open to receive a plot of horrid desolation? Tell me of this, thou art my chiefest good, and I will quaff thy health in bowls of blood.
I know two men that seem two innocents, whose looks surveyed with judicial eyes would seem to bear the marks of honesty, but snakes find harbor monks to the fairest flowers that never credit outward semblances.
Enter truth.
I know their hearts relentless, merciless, and will perform through hope of benefit more dreadful things than can be thought upon.
If gain will draw, I prithee then allure their hungry hearts with hope of recompense, but tie despair unto those moving hopes, unless a deed of murder father it. Then blood on blood shall overtake them all, and we will make a bloody festival.
The plots are laid, the keys of golden coin hath oped the secret closets of their hearts. Enter, insult, make captive at thy will, themselves and friends with deeds of damned ill. Yonder is truth, she cometh to bewail the times and parties that we work upon.
Why, let her weep, lament, and mourn for me. We are right bred of damned iniquity, and will go make a twofold tragedy.
And they exit, leaving truth behind.
Go, you disturbers of a quiet soul, sad, greedy, gaping, hungry cannibals that joy to practice others' miseries. Gentles, prepare your tear-bedecked eyes to see two shows of lamentation, besprinkled everywhere with guiltless blood of harmless youth and pretty innocence. Our stage doth wear habiliments of woe. Truth rues to tell the truth of these laments. The one was done in famous London late, within the street whose side the river Thames doth strive to wash from all impurity. But yet that silver stream can never wash the sad remembrance of that cursed deed, performed by cruel Mary on just Beech, and his true boy, poor Thomas Winchester. The most here present know this to be true. Would truth were false, so this were but a tale. The other, further off, but yet too near, to those that felt and did the cruelty. Near Padua this wicked deed was done by a false uncle on his brother's son, left to his careful education by dying parents, with as strict a charge as ever yet death-breathing brother gave. Look for no mirth, unless you take delight in mangled bodies and in gaping wounds, bloodily made by mercy-wanting hands. Truth will not feign, and yet doth grieve to show this deed of ruth and miserable woe.
And exit truth. So I have to say, there's something really sweet and heartwarming about the relationship between Homicide and Avarice. I don't know. I really liked them. Kiss, little heart. Oh, it's you. And do you know any good stories? Then we have Truth. We've met Truth before a few times in plays, and in that sense, it's quite interesting that Truth is here, saying, "I wish this story wasn't true. I wish I was making it up." But no, sadly, we got two stories here. One from London, sick, wicked place of iniquity, and one slightly further off, but just that too close, little bit too close for comfort. Thoughts on the room on this opening, Rachael?
Yeah, it's kind of like we get a double prologue, one from Homicide and then one from Truth. And that, it's a uncle murdering his nephew. And we have Avarice and Homicide. It's like a little bit of a, I don't know, it seems like a little bit of a vice character dumb show. Or something like that,
Yeah, I think what's nice about the different approaches is that Homicide and Avarice are there to set the tone, as it were. This is what you're getting. You're getting murder and greed. And then Truth is there to do a slightly more didactic thing of, okay, here's the plot coming up. But, no surprises. It's very Brechtian. Truth always feels like a Brechtian device. Obviously, they won't be thinking in those terms. He doesn't exist yet. But it's I'm thinking ahead already to what could be done with this. Eric, did you wave, and then Helen?
I was gonna say that it put me in the mind of like Arden or Faversham immediately. Just like, yes, this. We're in the same territory, but I don't know if it's gonna be quite as funny as it was.
That's a really good, interesting question. What the tone will be like, as it were. Helen, then Lynn.
Yeah, I'm quite disappointed so far. Here I am cast as Mary, and perfectly prepared to live up to my character's name, and then if I do get turned to the dark side, it could be a nice surprise for the audience. I'm not sure I like this idea of having a dumb show or an introduction or telling the plot in advance, especially in a murder. I think it needs suspense.
You're not a fan of the Columbo school of drama, then, where the suspense is in how are they going to be found out?
Well, that's a nice idea, but is that? Well, we shall see.
Well, it's the same gig with Arden and Faversham in a sense. These are stories that are to a degree known, or at least for the original audience. So there's an interesting question about, in the sense the audience is already perhaps pre-warned as to what's going to happen. That's presumably why they turned up. They're here for the blood.
These were known murders.
I believe that the two stories are known. I don't know how true both of them are, but that's something perhaps to pick up later on. Lynn.
Yeah, evidently, I was going to respond to Eric's comment that, yeah, evidently, it's sort of later in the early modern period in London, there was a kind of a vogue for true crime type of plays. This Two Tragedies one and Arden and Faversham. A woman killed with kindness is supposed to be a true story of a woman who cheated on her husband and then kind of died of a broken heart because she was a terrible person. So yeah, there's a sort of a subgenre of contemporary or recent true crime tragedies. Yeah, so yeah, it is part of a pattern.
Yeah, and we've done Arden and Faversham. We've done 3 first look exploring sessions on that. If you want to go away and have a little look at those, we can recommend them. Arden is a super fun play, which in terms of chronological terms is a few years, I think, before this, but it's not that far off. So the idea that this is perhaps a trend that we're starting to go into as we go in towards the end of the 1590s is something that we'll hopefully be able to explore further as we do more plays. But yes, that seems to be a thing. We need to move on. Let's gather some data as to what these people are actually like and what this play is doing. Act 1, Scene 1, enter Mary.
I live in mean and discontented state. But wherefore should I think of discontent? I am beloved. I have a pretty house, a loving sister and a careful man, and do not think their day's work well at end, except it bring me in some benefit. And well frequented is my little house, with many guests and honest passengers.
Around about here enter Beech and a friend,
which may in time advance my humble state to greater wealth and reputation. And here comes friends to drink some beer or ale.
and sit in his shop.
They are my neighbours, They shall have the best.
Neighbour Beech, let's have our morning's draught, and we'll go drink it at young Mary's house. They say he hath the best in all this town. Besides, they say he is an honest man, and keeps good rule and order in his house.
He's so indeed. His conversation is full of honest, harmless courtesy. I dare presume that if he be within, he'll serve us well and keep us company. See where he is. Go in, I'll follow you.
And we have the stage direction, strive curtsies.
Nay, straight no courtesy, you shall go before.
You're welcome, neighbour. You are welcome, sir. I pray sit down. You're very welcome both.
We thank you for it, and we think no less. Now fill 2 cans of your old, strongest beer that may make so many lose their little wits and make indentures as they go along.
Oh, Sister Rachael.
I come presently.
Enter Rachael.
Go draw these gentlemen 2 cans of beer. Your negligence that cannot tend the shop will make our customers forsake the house. Where's Harry Williams that he stays not here?
Myself was busy dressing up the house. As for your man, he is not very well, but sitteth sleeping by the kitchen fire.
If you are busy, get you up again.
And possibly Rachael exits here.
I'll draw my neighbours then their drink myself. I warrant you, as good as any man's, and yet no better. Many have the like.
And possibly exit Mary here for beer.
This shows him for a plain and honest man, that will not flatter with too many words. Some shrill-tongued fellows would have cogged and feigned, saying, I'll draw the best in Christendom.
He's none of those, but bears an honest mind, and shames to utter what he cannot prove.
Enter Mary.
But here he comes. Is that the best you have?
It is the best, upon mine honest word.
Then drink to us.
I drink unto you both.
Beech, we pledge you both, and thank you heartily.
Here's to you, sir.
I thank you.
Master Beech drinks. Drink, neighbour.
'Tis good indeed, and I'd rather drink such beer as this, as any Gascoigne wine. But 'tis our English manner to affect strange things, and price them at greater rate than homebred things of better consequence.
'Tis true indeed. If all were of your mind, my poor estate would sooner be advanced, and our French merchants seek some other trade.
Your poor estate. Nay, neighbour, say not so, for God be thanked you are well to live.
Not so, good neighbour, but a poor young man that would live better if I had the means. But as I am, I can content myself till God amend my poor ability.
In time, no doubt. My man, you are but young, and God, assure yourself, hath wealth in store, if you await his will with patience.
Thanks be to God, I live contentedly, and yet can't boast of mighty wealth. But yet God's beginnings have been infinite and far beyond my expectations. My shop is stored, I am not much in debt, and here I speak it where I may be bold. I have a score of pounds to help my need, if God should stretch his hand to visit me with sickness or such like adversity.
Enough of this. Now, neighbour, what's to pay?
2 pence, good sir.
Nay, pray, sir, forbear, I'll pay this reckoning, for it is but small.
I will not strive, since ye will have it so.
Neighbour, farewell.
And exit Beech and neighbour, leaving Mary.
Farewell unto you both. His shop is stored. He is not much in debt. He hath a score of pounds to help his need. Aye, and a score too, if truth were known. I would I had a shop so stored with wares, and 40 pounds to buy a bargain with, when as occasion should be offered me, I'd live as merry as the wealthiest man that hath his being within London walls. I cannot buy my beer, my bread, my meat, my faggots, coals, and such like necessaries at the best hand, because I want the coin. that many misers coffer up in bags, having enough to serve their turns besides. Or for a trick, to make this Beech's trash forsake his coffer and to rest in mine. I marry, sir, how may that trick be done? Marry, with ease and great facility. I will invent some newfound stratagem to bring his coin into my possession. What though his death relieve my poverty? Gain waits on courage, loss on cowardice.
And exit merry. Everybody's having a lovely time. Everyone's having some beer, having a lovely natter. Merry, seems mostly merry. Everyone says he's an honest chap. Shows him to be plain and honest man.
Yeah.
Immediately after he's done an aside to the audience that suggests he's possibly not. Already, I mean, because we know Mary's going to do some bad things. This is already potentially playing on ironies there. Lots of bustle, people popping in and out, people making curtsies to each other. Thoughts in the room about Mary or Beech or Neighbour, the scene in general. Before we move on to murder number 2, please. Helen.
Well, he's got what he needs as a young man. He hasn't yet got a wife, but he's got a sister to keep house for him. He can employ a servant. He's not complaining about the rent. Admittedly, he's restricted in what he can charge for his beer, however good it is, by the assize, which seems to limit it at a penny a pottle. But he's young and impatient.
I see trouble ahead.
And he doesn't, other people's prosperity he sees not as a goal for him to aspire to, but as an affront to him as he now is. He is envious.
Envy. Rachael, then Lynn.
No, I wonder if some of the names, like Mary is not something that he has, but what Helen just said, it's something that he covets. And if we're, gonna have this play throughout the, we're gonna have this like theme throughout the play of people putting on a friendly face, having a, not so nice intentions underneath, to move forward and get what they want, acting nice to do something evil.
Yes, we had covetousness, avarice at the beginning. So the themes of the play have been laid out, and we're starting to see them in action coming forward. Lynn.
So Mary is not the kind of person that Homicide talks about in the very beginning of the play, when he talks about, I can't get anything done in this town because everyone is working hard and doing what they're supposed to. They are all bent with virtuous gainful trade to get their needments for this mortal life, and will not soil their well-addicted hearts. So people are working hard and being diligent and good little citizens, and I can't get a foothold here. But Mary is not that.
Yeah, that's the devil making work for idle hands there element there. If only he was more active. Keep the people at work. Okay, we're going to go to the next plot number 2. As we go to Act 1, Scene 2, we're all in it, I think, because we're very tight in terms of numbers. Enter Pandino and Armenia, sick on a bed. Pertillo, their son. Fallerio, his brother. Sostrata, his wife. Allenso, their son. And a Scrivener with a will, etc.
Brother and sister, pray you both draw near, and hear my will which you have promised shall be performed with wished providence. This little orphan I must leave behind, by your direction to be governed. As for my wife and I, we do await the blessed hour when it shall please the Lord to take us to the just Jerusalem. Our chiefest care is for that tender boy, which we should leave discomfortless behind, but that we do assure us of your love and care to guide his weak, unable youth in paths of knowledge, grace, and godliness. As for the riches of this mortal life, we leave enough, £400 a year, besides £2,000 to make a stock, in money, jewels, plate, and household stuff, which yearly rents and goods we leave to you, to be surrendered into his hands when he attains to years of discretion. My will imports thus much, which you shall hear, and you shall be my sole executor.
Brother and sister, how my heart laments to see your weak and sick afflicted limbs near overcome with direful maladies. The God of heaven can truly testify, which to speak plain is ne'er a whit at all, which knows the secret corners of my heart. But for the care you do impose on me for the tuition of your little son, think, my kind brother, I will meditate both day and night how I may best fulfill and the care and trust and repose it in your will, and see him posted quickly after you.
Enough, kind brother. We assure us so, else would we seek another friend abroad to do our wills and dying testament. Nature and love will have a double care to bring him up with careful diligence, as best beseems one of such parentage.
Assure yourself, the safest course I can shall be provided for your little son. He shall be sent unto the King of Heaven.
Fear not, good brother, and my loving sister, but we will have as tender care of him as if he were our own 10,000 times. God will be father of the fatherless and keep him from all care and wretchedness.
Uncle and aunt, take comfort. I will see my little cousin have no injury.
We thank you all. Come, let the will be read.
If it were sealed, I would you both were dead.
Then give attention, I will read the will. In the name of God, amen, etc.
Thus, if my son miscarry, my dear brother, you and your son shall then enjoy the land and all the goods which he should have possessed.
If he miscarry, brother, God forbid. God bless my nephew, that thine eyes may see thy children's children with prosperity. I had rather see the little urchin hanged than he should live and I forego the land.
Thanks, gentle brother. Husband, seal the will.
Give me pen and ink first to subscribe. I write so ill through very feebleness that I can scarcely know this hand for mine, but that you all can witness that it is.
Give me the seal. I pray, sir, take it off. This you deliver for your latest will, and do confirm it for your testament?
With all my heart, dear brother, keep my will, and I refer me to the will of God, praying him deal as well with you and yours, as you no doubt will deal with my poor child. Come, my Pertillo, let me bless thee, boy, and lay my half-dead hand upon thy head. God grant those days that are cut off in me, with joy and peace may multiply in thee. Be slow to wrath, obey thy uncle still, submit thyself unto God's holy will. In deed and word see thou be ever true. So brother, child, and kinsfolks, all adieu.
And Pandino dieth.
Ah, my dear mother, is my father dead?
Aye, my sweet boy, his soul to heaven is fled. but I shall after him immediately. Then take my latest blessing ere I die. Come, let me kiss thy little tender lips. Cold death hath ta'en possession of thy mother. Let me embrace thee in my dying arms and pray the Lord protect thee from all harms. Brother, I fear this child, when I am gone, will have great cause of grief and hideous fear. You will protect him, but I prophesy his share will be of woe and misery. But mother's fears do make these cares arise. Come, boy, and close thy mother's dying eyes. Brother and sister, hear the latest words that your dead sister leaves for memory. If you deal ill with this distressed boy, God will revenge poor orphan's injuries. If you deal well, as I do hope you will, God will defend both you and yours from ill. Farewell, farewell. Now let me breathe my last into his dearest mouth that wanteth breath, and as we loved in life, embrace in death. Brother and sister, this is all I pray. Tender my boy when we are laid in clay.
And she also dieth.
God's holy angel guide your loving souls unto a place of endless happiness.
Amen, amen. Ah, what a care she had of her small orphan. She did dying pray to love her child when she was laid in clay.
Ah, blame her not, although she held it dear. She left him young, the greater cause of fear.
Knew she my mind, it would recall her life, and like a staring comet, she would move our hearts to think of desolation. Scrivener, have you certified the will?
I have.
There's 2 ducats for your pains.
Oh, thanks, gentle sir. And for this time, farewell. He exits.
Come, pretty cousin, by grim death of thy most careful parents all too soon. Weep not, gentle sweet boy, thou shalt have cause to say thy aunt was kind, though parents lie in clay.
Give me leave first to lament the loss of my dear parents. Nature bindeth me to wail the death of those that gave me life. And if I live until I be a man, I will erect a sumptuous monument and leave remembrance to ensuing times of kind Pandino and Armenia.
That shall not need. My father will erect that sad memorial of their timeless death. And at that tomb we will lament and say, soft lie the bones of fair Armenia.
Surcease, Allenso, that's a bootless cost. The will imports no such injunction. I will not spend my little nephew's wealth in such vain toys. They shall have funeral, but with no stately ceremonial pomp. That's good for naught but fools to gaze upon. Live thou in hope to have thy uncle's land.
His land? My father, you have land enough, and more by much than I do know to use. I would his virtues would in me survive, so should my uncle seem in me alive. But to your will I do submit myself. Do what you please concerning funeral.
Come then, away that we may take in hand to have possession of my brother's land, his goods and all, until he come of age, to rule and govern such possessions that shall be never, or I'll miss the mark, till I surrender up my life to death, and then my son shall be his father's heir, and mount aloft to honor's happy chair.
And exit. Moo ha 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 ha. There's lots of asides in play here again, potentially. You don't want a big tomb. I mean, you don't want a massive funeral. No, don't waste your money. It's just other people will just gape at it. You know what it's like. People just turn up and eat all the sandwiches. They had nothing to do with the family at all. They never met your parents. You don't want to be wasting your money on them. We don't have the text of the will. I'm assuming the Scrivener doesn't just sit down and read it to himself. We can assume that that was a separate document that didn't make it to the printer. But I'm sure we could infer from what's going on some text in sufficient legalese in passing. It might be the Scrivener is just checking it over, but it does seem that they're supposed to be read the will aloud, seems to be inferred, but maybe I'm wrong. Alan, then Helen.
Well, you've got the heads of the thing in the opening speech from the father. You know, all that would need is to add about 4 pages of legalese to make it look kosher.
Helen, then Lynn.
Yeah, I mean, it would be extremely simple. I could probably do you one off the top of my head, because reading early modern wills is one of the things I've had to do enormous quantities and at great length. And they are very much of a kind. I mean, what he's doing is creating a trust. I mean, in the name of God, amen, is how, this is a very English will. It's not a Paduan will at all. His first bequest will be he bequeaths his soul to Almighty God. And his second bequest is that he bequeaths everything of which he stands possessed to his son, to his brother or brother-in-law, whatever it is, in trust for his son on his coming to full age. And then instructions for his upbringing.
Yeah, if my son miscarry, dear brother. Oh, if he miscarry, God forbid. Oh, no,
Yes.
Wouldn't want that to happen. Don't. Why would anyone put that thought into my mind? Lynn.
Yeah, I was completely changing the subject. I was really a little surprised that the way this is organized is that we toggle back and forth between the stories rather than have one story and then another story. It seems to me there's a printed text, 2 plays in one, and maybe Yorkshire Tragedy is one of those. There are 2 short plays that are published in quarto together. So that was kind of what I was expecting in one and another. I couldn't parlay either of these stories into a full-length play, so I wrote 2 short plays. Because doing it this way is going to entail a lot more costume changes, I imagine, in the original practice, because you didn't have a cast of enough to give everybody one part. So, like, why do it this way? That seems to me an odd choice.
It's a good question, of which I do not know the answer, and in fact, to a degree, I suspect nobody knows the answer, but lots of people have lots of answers. But anyway, Rachael.
No, I was just gonna say maybe it's like they're going back and forth, but there is a similar theme, like Mary has things already and he wants more, and Allenso lets us know that his father is already a very very wealthy man, but even though he has this, he's still not satisfied. And I wonder if that's some moral that this is trying to say, that you can have as much as you want, but you're always going to want something else, and you won't be satisfied if you're just that type of person.
There could be lots of possible reasons, which we may get more data as we go on. I like that. But other thoughts may be available. Any other thoughts before we go into Act 1, Scene 3? Elizabeth?
Yeah, I was thinking about what Lynn was saying about this kind of almost this like texturing of one story and then another story kind of layered together. I was just wondering about the fact that they told us the narrative in the prologue, and they told us kind of what would happen. So what's keeping the audience in suspense is the actual events of the murders themselves. And I wondered maybe that was partly to do with the stylistic choice of mixing the 2 narratives together.
Yeah. Well, I think maybe the next scene will give us more information as to that point. Okay, we're going to go into Act 1, Scene 3. We're going back to Merry. Enter Merry Solus.
Beech hath a score of pounds to help his need, and I may starve ere he will lend it me. But in despite I'll have it ere I sleep, although I send him to eternal rest. But, shallow fool, thou talk'st of mighty things, and canst not compass what thou dost conceive. Stay, let me see. I'll fetch him to my house, and in my garret quickly murder him. The night conceals all in her pitchy cloak, and none can open what I mean to hide. But then his boy will say I fetched him forth. Ah, I am resolved he shall be murdered too. This tool shall write, subscribe, and seal their death, and send them safely to another world. But then my sister and my man at home will not conceal it when the deed is done. Tush, one for love, the other for reward, will never tell the world my close intent. My conscience saith it is a damned deed to train one forth and slay him privily. Peace, conscience, peace, thou art too scrupulous. Gain doth attend this resolution. Hence, dastard fear. I must, I can, I will kill my best friend to get a bag of gold. They shall die both, had they 1,000 lives, and therefore I will place this hammer here and take it as I follow Beech upstairs, that suddenly, before he is aware, I may with blows dash out his hateful brains. Oh, Rachael, bring me my cloak and look to the house. I will return again immediately.
Here it is, brother. I pray you stay not long. Guests will come in. 'Tis almost supper time.
And exit Rachael.
Let others sup. I'll make a bloodier feast than ever yet was dressed in Mary's house. Be like thyself then, have a merry heart. Thou shalt have gold to mend thy poverty, and after this live ever wealthily.
Then Merry must pass to Beech's shop, who must seat in his shop, and Winchester his boys stand by, Beech reading.
What, neighbour Beech, so godly occupied?
Aye, Master Merry, it were better read than meditate on idle fantasies.
You speak the truth there. You speak the truth. There is a friend or two of yours making merry at my house, and would desire to have your company.
Know you their names?
No, truly, nor the men. I never stood to question them of that, but they desire your presence earnestly.
I pray you tell them that I cannot come. 'Tis supper time, and many will resort for ware at this time above all other times. 'Tis Friday night besides, and Bartholomew Eve. Therefore, good neighbor, make my just excuse.
In truth, they told me that you should not stay. Go but to drink. You may come quick again, but not an if my hand and hammer hold.
I am unwilling, but I do not care, and if I go to see the company.
Come quickly then. They think we stay too long.
I'll cut a piece of cheese to drink withal.
Aye, and take the farewell of your cutting knife. Here is a hand shall help you cut your throat, and give myself a fairing from your chest. What, are you ready? Will you go along?
Aye, now I am. Boy, you mend the shop. If any ask, come for me to the bull. I wonder who they are that ask for me.
I know not that. You shall see presently. Go up these stairs, your friends to stay above. Here is that friend shall shake you by the head and make you stagger ere he speak to you.
Then, being in the upper room, Mary strikes him in the head 15 times.
Now, you are safe. I would the boy was so. But wherefore wish I? For he shall not live. For if he do, I shall not live myself.
And Mary wipes his face, blood from his face.
Let's see what money he hath in his purse. Mass, here's 10 groats. There's something for my pains, but I must be rewarded better yet.
Enter Rachael and Harry Williams.
Who was it, Rachael, that went up the stairs?
It was my brother and a little man of black complexion, but I know him not.
Why do you not then carry up a light, but suffer them to tarry in the dark?
I had forgot, but I will bear one up.
And exit
Do
up.
so. Sorry. Do so, I prithee, he will chide anon.
And exit Williams. Rachael speaketh to her brother.
Brother, what have you done?
Why, murdered one that would have murdered me.
We are undone, brother, we are undone. What shall I say, for we are quite undone.
Quiet thyself, sister, all shall be well. But see, in any case, you do not tell this deed to Williams, nor to anyone.
No, I will not. Was't not Master Beech?
It is. And I will kill his man, or in attempting do the best I can.
And enter Williams and Rachael, ? On that stage direction.
What was the matter that you cried so loud?
I must not tell you, but we are undone.
You must not tell me, but we are undone. I'll know the cause wherefore we are undone.
And exit up.
Oh, would the thing were but to do again. The thought thereof doth rent my heart in twain.
And she goes up. Williams to Mary above.
Oh, master, what have you done?
Why, slain a knave that would have murdered me. Better to kill than to be killed myself.
With what? Wherewith? How have you slain the man?
Why, with this hammer. I knocked out his brains.
Oh, it was beastly so to butcher him. If any quarrel were twixt him and you should have bade him meet you in the field, not like a coward under your own roof to knock him down as if he had been an ox, or silly sheep prepared for slaughterhouse. The Lord is just and will revenge his blood on you and yours for this extremity. I will not stay an hour within your house. It is the wickedest deed that e'er was done.
Oh, sir, content yourself. All shall be well. What's done already cannot be undone.
Oh, would to God the deed were now to do, and I were privy to your ill intent, you should not do it then for all the world. But prithee, Harry, do not leave the house, for then suspicion will arise thereof, and if the thing be known, we are undone.
Forsake the house. I will not stay all night, though you will give the wealth of Christendom.
But yet conceal it, for the love of God. If otherwise, I know not what to do.
Here is my hand. I'll never utter it. Assure yourself of that. And so, farewell.
But swear to me, as God shall help thy soul, thou wilt not tell it unto anyone.
I will not swear, but take my honest word, and so farewell. My soul assureth me God will revenge this damned iniquity.
Exit Mary and Rachael.
What shall become of me, unhappy wretch? I dare not lodge within my master's house, for fear his murderous hand shall kill me too. I will go walk and wander up and down, and seek some rest until the day appear. At the Three Cranes, in some hayloft I'll lie, and wail my master's coming misery.
And exit. Quite a lot to unpack there. It's something about Mary that just it's like he's. I mean, 15 times. That's quite a large number of blows, and there's all this travelling up and down that's going on. So all of this is probably taking longer than the way we've been reading it. There's an awful lot of I like the whispering, and I think there's more possibilities in there as well. But Mary's excuse of it was a slave that would have murdered me, and he says it's just that's the excuse, and it's so thin, and there's no and this yet conceal it for the love of God, if otherwise I know not what to do, is clearly a threat. Yeah, and no, you better swear by God before you go, otherwise I am going to stove your head in as well. I mean, it's and Williams really should just immediately run to the watch or whatever at this point. I mean, he's torn a bit, because he has vaguely sworn an oath that he won't tell anyone, and also is his master, but also 15 times. I mean, it must be such a mess. Rachael.
I feel like there's something that there's something with the staging of this that, there's the actual actor has, exited, and they've, it's because Rachael has to bring up a candle, that there's some sort of artificial darkness that they've brought down onto the stage. And then, maybe they've thrown in some leftover offal or something, from a butcher, because she doesn't recognize this person. She asks, is this who it is? And we get this grimness, and I think that they're they could have staged this in a way where there is this very grim reveal where she lights the candle up there and sees it and reveals it. They bring up the lights and the audience could see it.
Well, I mean, there is the advantage that with this idea that the murder happens above, that actually the audience can't see it. All they can see is a swinging arm and puts his hand into a bucket of gore, and actually it's quite efficient because it means you don't need to clear a body, and that might actually be the way it works, and actually that might be more horrific than actually if we see it. But I don't think we as performers today need to necessarily. We can think about how we might stage this as well. It's full of all sorts of interest. I'm really worried about Mary's state of mind. I mean, there's something not there. Yeah. There's something very weird about the way he thinks. I mean, it's interesting the way he thinks through everything in advance. I must, I can, I will. But it's like the moment the deed is done, he's just actually completely in shock, which is not an unreasonable reaction, but it's just like he knows the excuses and the stuff that he should be doing to get away with this murder, but he can't really do it properly. Lynn?
Well, not believably, anyway.
No.
So, well, yeah, and just sort of even backing up from the murder and thinking about, what is Mary's thought process? His ostensible motivation for that is there's this big bag of gold that's a fair amount of money for an ordinary working person at this period. But why doesn't he distract his victim and maybe his victim's page, his victim's man, get them into his pub, excuse himself, and go to the guy's house and just rob him? Why does he have to kill him anyway? If he just seems to have no moral center.
Helen and then Elizabeth.
Yeah, he doesn't achieve a bag of gold. It's a remarkably small amount of money.
The groats, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a groat is 4 pence. So, 3 groats to the shilling. I mean, we're not talking about large amounts of money. It's all right, my American friends. We don't expect you to understand our extraordinarily sensible currency of. But the point is that he hasn't succeeded in suborning Williams. He hasn't succeeded in getting and killing the boy. And he hasn't managed to convince his sister enough, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I didn't know how to play him. He has, I think, what we're supposed to call mental health issues.
Yeah, or just simply the straightforward trauma of what he's just done has just completely, banjaxed him, and he's just staggering around doing the form of the thing, but he's not actually doing it very well. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was thinking about motive and about comparisons to things I've seen. And I saw a film called Irreversible. And there's a scene in it where one of the characters kills another with a fire extinguisher. He hits him in the head with a fire extinguisher, and that's incredibly gory. But to bash the character's head in 15 times, that to me indicates that Mary is hiding an incredible amounts of rage. He's almost wrathful, vengeful anger. And the murder, the way it's carried out, seems almost like in terms of like a revenge. It doesn't seem to be about money at all. It seems to be about murder for murder's sake. And I think that it's quite masterful the way Yarington kind of creates this murder that is so gory, that is so intense, that it's the focus. It becomes the focus rather than the motive.
Mm. Yeah, that this scene is just so extreme, and and it's a hammer. I mean, it's just that you just need to see the weapon, and they make a lot of the weapon, so that the kind of damage this thing could be doing before the event happens. So the idea that you just see the rage. This chap who on the surface is terribly merry and nice, it has something boiling underneath the surface. I really like that. Eric.
I was going to say that technically we have, well, not a motive, but like the excuse he gives the audience is kind of like, in the first part of that scene, he goes, Beech hath a score of pounds to help his need, and I may starve ere he will lend it me. So basically, like, his logic is that, this is faster. And then I don't have to pay him back. I don't have to worry about anyone sort of, yeah.
Right. Rachael, and then we need to move it back to the other plot.
What Elizabeth was saying and what Helen was saying, how the violence of this, and that it's only like, what is it, like 10 groats or something that he gets. There's a dissatisfaction, that this repeated, like there's this feeling of it's not enough, like we've had in the previous scenes, like what he already has isn't enough.
Mm. And remember, he's locked in already to himself into killing somebody else as well. So it's doubly not enough. There's that slightly odd line, just to flag up. It was my brother and a little man of black complexion. I'm assuming that's in terms of, is that literally complexion, or is that just simply of it was dark and they were wearing dark, they were muffled up, or... I'm just wondering about that as a line of dialogue. It doesn't fully signify as to what's going on there. I don't know if anyone's got any thoughts on that. It just sort of leaps out at one as just very odd as a turn of phrase in this context. Eric?
I was going to say that it either means that like he's sort of dark skinned, or like it's very, very dark because she can't see the color of his skin.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was supposed to mean, on the principle that Rachael does know the person who's just gone up the stairs, so it would make more sense if it is supposed to mean it was dark and they were covered up. But I don't know. Lynn?
And black was a much vaguer term in this period. It could mean something like someone with Eric's complexion might be considered black, Dark hair and olive skin, that term might be applied to you. So
yeah, it's odd, and I don't quite know what it's supposed to signify in absolute terms, because I say we know Rachael was in the room with the victim earlier, so it's not like she doesn't know him. So maybe that's where it's going. I don't know. Anyway, thoughts on the room anon. We'll go into Act 1, Scene 4, rather, as we go to the other cheerful, happy plot. I don't expect a clown anytime soon, by the way, people. Not getting the impression we're going to get that. Enter Fallerio Solus.
I have possession of my brother's goods. His tenants pay me rent, acknowledge me to be their landlord. They frequent my house with turkeys, capons, pigeons, pigs, and geese, and all to gain my favor and goodwill. His plate, his jewels, hangings, household stuff may well be seemed to fit a demi-king. His stately buildings, his delightful walks, his fertile meadows, and his rich plowed lands, his well-grown woods and stored fishing ponds, bring endless wealth, besides continual help to keep a good and hospitable house. And shall I joy these pleasures but a time? Nay, brother, sister, all shall pardon me, before I'll sell myself to penury. The world doth know thy brother but resigned the lands and goods until his son attained to riper years to wield and govern them. Then openly thou canst not do him wrong. He living, there's the burden of the song. Call it a burden, for it seems so great a heavy burden that the boy should live and thrust me from this height of happiness, that I will not endure so heavy weight, but shake it off and live at liberty, free from the yoke of such subjection. The boy shall die, were he my father's son, before I'll part with my possession. I'll call my son and ask his good advice, how I may best dispatch this serious cause. Ho, Sir Allenso.
Father?
Hearken, son, I must entreat your furtherance and advice about a thing that doth concern us near. First, tell me how thou dost affect in heart little Pertillo, thy dead uncle's son.
So well, good father, that I cannot tell whether I love him dearer than myself. And yet, if that my heart were called to count, I think it would surrender me to death, ere young Pertillo should sustain a wrong.
How got his safety such a deep regard within your heart, that you affect it so?
Nature gave root, love and the dying charge of his dead father give such store of sap unto this tree of my affection, that it will never wither till I die.
But nature, love, and reason tell thee thus: thyself must yet be nearest to thyself.
His love doth not estrange me from myself, but doth confirm my strength in multitudes of benefits his love will yield to me.
Beware to foster such pernicious snakes within thy bosom, which will poison thee.
He is a dove, a child, an innocent, and cannot poison father, though he would.
I will be plainer. No, Pertillo's life, which thou dost call a dove, an innocent, a harmless child, and I know not what, will harm thee more than any serpent can, aye, than the very sight of basilisk.
Father, you tell me of a strange discourse. How can his life produce such detriment as basilisks, whose only sight is death?
Hearken to me, and I will tell thee how. Thou knowest, his father's goods, his house's lands, have much advanced our reputation, in having but the usage for a time. If the boy live, then like to senseless beasts, Like long-eared asses and rich-laden mules, we must resign these treasures to a boy. And we, like asses, feed on simple hay. Make him away, they shall continue ours by virtue of his father's testament. The jewels, castles, meadows, houses, lands, which thy small cousin should defeat thee of, shall be thine own, and thou advance thyself above the height of thine ancestors.
But if I mount by murder and deceit, justice will thrust aspiring thoughts below, and make me capable to break my neck after some woeful lamentation of my obedience to unlawfulness. I tell you, Thane, I would not have him die. Might I enjoy the Soldan's empery?
What? Wilt thou bar thyself of happiness? Stop the large stream of pleasures which would flow and still attend on thee like serving men? Prefer the life of him that loves thee not before thine own and my felicity?
I'd rather choose to feed on carefulness, to ditch, to delve and labour for my bread. Nay, rather choose to beg from door to door than condescend to offer violence to young Pertillo in his innocence. I know you speak to sound what mighty share Pertillo hath in my affection.
In faith I do not. Therefore, prithee say, wilt thou consent to have him made away?
Why then, in faith, I am ashamed to think I had my being from so foul a lump of adulation and unthankfulness. Ah, their dying prayers to no avail within your heart? No, damned extortion hath left no room for grace to harbour in. Audacious sin, how canst thou make him say, consent to make my brother's son away?
Nay, if you begin to brawl, withdraw yourself, but utter not the motion that I made, as you love me or do regard your life.
And as you love my safety and your soul, let grace and fear of God such thoughts control.
Still prattling, let your grace and fear alone, and leave me quickly to my private thoughts, or with my sword I'll open wide a gate for wrath and bloody death to enter in.
Better you gave me death and burial than such foul deed should o'erthrow us all.
Still are you wagging that rebellious tongue? I'll dig it out for crows to feed upon if thou continue longer in my sight.
Exit Allenso.
He loves him better than he loves his life. Here's repetition of my brother's care, of sisters charged of grace and fear of God. Fear dastards, cowards, faint heart runaways. I'll feel no colours will obtain my will. Though all the fiends in hell were opposite, I'd rather lose mine eyes, my hand, my foot, be blind, want sense, and be ever lame, than to be tormented with such discontent as resignation would afflict me with. Be blithe, my boy, thy life shall sure be done before the setting of the morrow's sun.
And exit Fallerio. Enter Avarice and Homicide, bloody.
Make haste, run headlong to destruction. I like thy temper that canst change a heart from yielding flesh to flint and adamant. Thou hittest it home where thou dost fast and hold. Nothing can separate the love of gold.
Fear no relenting I dare upon my soul, and that's no gauge, it is the devil's due. He shall imbue his greedy, gripping hands in the dead bosom of the bloody boy, and wind himself, his son, and harmless wife in endless folds of sure destruction. Now, Homicide, thy looks are like thyself, for blood and death are thy companions. Let my confounding plots but go before, and thou shalt wade up to the chin in gore.
I find it true, for where thou art let in, there is no scruple made of any sin. The world may see thou art the root of ill, for but for thee, poor Beech had lived still.
and exit, and that's the end of Act 1. Yes, we have returns to Avarice and Homicide as ongoing semi-choric figures. There's a nice thematic link with this scene from the last scene, and of again this question of someone being let into, in this case, a future planned murder, and then being asked to remain secret, as opposed to the previous scene where someone was attempted to be suborned after the fact. And it's a really interesting little two-hander for the most part of just you've how did you end up liking him? What? How did that happen? Yeah, some really nice. I'm ashamed to think I had my being from so foul a lump of adulation and unthankfulness. That's yeah. I'm liking bits of this. Lynn.
I'm beginning to see the advantage of the structure that I was commenting on earlier, rather than do one play and then do another play, toggling back and forth. Put some emphasis on the common themes of greed, discontent with a perfectly okay life, the fact that there are people close to the murderer who know about it and are against it. So you see those parallels much more clearly if you go back and forth rather than do one and do the other. And like Elizabeth said, it gives it kind of an interest, a kind of texture that since it's like begins with spoilers, that is helpful, since otherwise it might be a little boring.
Or confusing, flinging from one city to another without some prep to know that that's happening. I mean, it has another structural use in the sense that it means that time can pass between scenes where, Mary exited the last scene and, closed the last scene and opened the next in terms of his narrative. So it makes it easier to without having some comedy servants come in or something to break up the flow of that particular story. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I loved the conversation between Fallerio and Allenso. I didn't know that Yarington was going to give us this kind of debate between a murderer and someone who finds murder pliable and like plausible, and someone who finds it abhorrent, and who really kind of understands sort of like the staining of someone's soul. And I really like the way Allenso kind of like, he doesn't seem to see the danger in contradicting Fallerio's point of view, because if someone who's so ready to murder could, murder him. So I really enjoyed that conversation. I like that contrast. And then we got Avarice and Homicide again coming in, and that's another nice contrast between characters again.
Yeah, Homicide really likes their work, you can tell, and just covered in blood, and Avarice going, "Don't worry, I can get your blood up to here. It's going to be a gore fest. It really will. Which is appealing to a certain kind of audience, as it were, which I think is it's maybe not for everyone. It's one to make sure you advertise it carefully, but there is an active audience for this kind of grand guignol quality to it all. But it's not all grand guignol. It does have this thing, Fallerio talking again through the logic of what are the pros and cons. And Fallerio's got a really good motive here. He has acquired a lot of great stuff, but that stuff will go away if this boy doesn't die. So, yeah. We need to move on into Act 2. Just a warning. Might be quite bloody again. Just saying. Might. That's not really a spoiler. We've been told this is coming. Act 2, Scene 1. Enter Rachael and Mary.
Oh, my dear brother, what a heap of woe your rashness hath poured down upon your head. Where shall we hide this trumpet of your shame, this timeless, ugly map of cruelty? Brother, if Williams do reveal the truth, then begins our scene of Ruth.
I fear not Williams, but I fear the boy who knew I fetched his master to my house.
What, doth the boy know whereabouts you dwell?
Aye, that torments me worse than pangs of hell. He must be slain too, else he'll utter all.
Hark, brother, hark, methinks I hear one call.
Go down and see. Pray God my man keep close. If he prove long-tongued, then my days are done. The boy must die. There's no help at all. For on his life, my very life depends. Besides, I cannot compass what I would unless the boy be quickly made away. That this abridged his hapless master's days shall leave such sound memorials on his head that he shall quite forget who did him harm, or train his master to this bloody feast. Why, how now, Rachael? Who did call below?
Re-enter Rachael.
A maid that came to have a penny loaf.
I would a penny loaf cost me £1, provided Beech's boy had eat his last.
Perchance the boy doth not remember you.
It may be so, but I'll remember him and send him quickly with a bloody scroll to greet his master in another world.
I'll go to Beech's on a feigned excuse, to see if he will ask me for his master.
No, get you up. You shall not stir abroad. And when I call, come quickly to the door.
Brother, or that anything beside to please your mind or ease your misery.
And exit Rachael.
I am knee-deep. I'll wade up to the waist to end my heart of fear and to attain the hoped end of my intention. But I may see, if I have eyes to see, and if my understanding be not blind, how many dangers do already wait upon my steps of bold security. Williams is fled, perchance to utter all. That's but perchance. Nay, rather flatly no. But should he tell, I can but die a death. Should he conceal, the boy would utter it. The boy must die. There is no remedy.
And the boy discovered sitting at his master's door.
I wondered that my master stays so long. He had not wont to be abroad so late. Yonder comes one. I think that seems he.
I see the boy sits at his master's door. Or now or never, Mary, stir thyself, and rid thy heart from fear and jealousy. Thomas Winchester, go quickly to your shop. What? Sit you still? Your master is at hand.
When the boy goeth into the shop, Mary striketh 6 blows on his head, and with the 7th leaves the hammer sticking in his head. The boy groaning must be heard by a maid who must cry to her master, Mary flieth.
Oh God, I think there's thieves in Beech's shop.
Enter one in his shirt and a maid, and coming to Beech's shop finds the boy murdered.
What cruel hand hath done so foul a deed, thus to bemangle a distressed youth, without all pity or due remorse? See how the hammer sticketh in his head, wherewith this honest youth is done to death. Speak, honest Thomas, if any speech remain. What cruel hand hath done this villainy? Cannot speak, his senses are bereft. Ho, neighbour Loney, pray come down with speed. Your tenant Beech's man is murdered.
What? Would you have some mustard?
Your tenant Beech's man is murdered.
Who's smothered? I think you lack your wit. What, neighbor, what make you here so late?
I was affrighted by a sudden cry. coming down saw Master Beech's man thus with a hammer sticking in his head.
Oh, woe is me for Thomas Winchester, the truest soul that ever master had. Where's Master Beech?
Nay, nobody can tell. Did you see any running from the door when you looked out and heard the young man cry?
Yes, I saw truly to my thinking, but they ran away as fast as their hands could bear them. By my troth, 'twas so dark I could see nobody. Pray God Master Beech hath not hurt his boy in his patience, and if he have, he must be hanged in his collar.
I dare be sworn he would not strike him thus. Pray God his master be not slain himself. The night grows late, and we will have this course be watched all night. Tomorrow we shall see whence sprang this strange, uncivil cruelty.
Neighbour, good night.
Neighbors all, good night.
Pray God I never see so sad a sight.
And exit Neighbour, Loney, Maid, etc. Enter Mary knocking at the door, and Rachael comes down.
Oh, sister, now I am pursued. The mighty clamour that the boy did make hath raised the neighbours round about the street, so that I know not where to hide myself.
Brother, have you killed Beech's boy?
No, not I, but yet another hath. Come to bed, for fear we be descried. The fearfullest night that ever Mary knew.
Exeunt. No, not I, but yet another hath. Yeah. Yeah. No, I just happened to be wandering by and someone got murdered. Okay, we've got another really brutal murder. This time in the shop. So again, we don't necessarily see the action. The striker for the 6 blows, maybe intimated by other means. I mean, I think for a modern production, I feel that this is back projection time, silhouette kind of action. But it's that detail, and it's an important detail of the hammer sticking in his head. That's important for reasons that will become clear later. We got lots of little bits of detail here of this chap Loney, who's half asleep, pops out of his window, and the sort of sense that there's a reasonable number of windows or entrances that are available for this production, as well as obviously an upstairs space, as it were. So yeah, pretty grim. Rachael is not hearing some of those lines by Mary. Where Mary is saying, "Oh, I'd probably better murder Beech's boy." There's lots of little asides in there that Rachael is clearly not hearing. Helen.
Do we know what Beech's occupation is?
Has it been mentioned?
I think bookseller was implied at one point.
Yeah. And what's actually worrying me about this scene is that I don't know what the maid is up to. I really don't.
In what way?
Well,
she thinks that maybe Beech killed the boy. She doesn't know Beech is dead, of course. On the logic that the master may accidentally have killed his boy, having got annoyed with him.
In his patience, I see. And so Beech would be hanged. And there's a pun on collar and collar. Yeah, not a good time for making silly puns. But it was
first joke of the show.
Yeah, it was 2 people ran away as fast as their hands could bear them. This is clown stuff, isn't it? But there was only one that ran away. Or there was nobody that ran away but Mary, who gave the first alarm. Oh no, Mary Flies.
I don't know who she saw.
Master Beech is a chandler and a shopkeeper.
Ah, right, candles then.
Which gives us opportunities for so much, if this is an indoor company, Beech is also quite small. which we know boys' companies are into all sorts of activities. I don't think there are any boys' companies, unfortunately, around about the time this play comes about. So I think it's a bit of an interregnum on boys. So it's just a shame, because it would work really well for that kind of logic, and it's got that level of gruesomeness that I think a young boy company would probably enjoy. Anyway, wanton speculation adds nothing at this stage. Other thoughts about, I say, this thing of Merry, who's really just keeps in this circle of questioning himself about, well, the boy knows something, but Williams knows something. Well, well, it's a sort of zero-sum game for him, isn't it? It doesn't matter if he kills the boy, because he can only really be hanged, once. So he's sort of got to do it. And, well, Williams might, but I know Williams, so it's probably okay. But you almost think that maybe Williams is next on the list. I don't know.
Well, his sister knows. I mean, I don't think any of them have got. I wouldn't give any of them insurance.
Okay. We need to move on to back to the other plot, where Fallerio has failed with Allenso. So now we have Act 2, Scene 2. Enter Fallerio and two ruffians.
Seem it not strange, resolved gentlemen, that thus I privately have severed you to open secret furrows in my heart. Think not I do intend to undermine your passed lives, although you know I am a man to whom the true unpartial sword of equal justice is delivered. Therefore, swear both, as you respect your souls at the last dreadful session held in heaven, first to conceal and next to execute what I reveal and shall enjoin you to.
So you reward us for whatsoever it be. We vow performance and true secrecy.
There, go aside, ye seeming semblances of equal justice and true piety, and lay my heart's corrupted citadel wide open to your thoughts to look into. No, I am named Fallerio, to deceive the world with show of truth and honesty, but yet nor truth nor honesty abides within my thoughts, but falsehood, cruelty, blood-sucking avarice, and all the sins that hale men onto blood of stratagems, like to yourselves, which care not how you gain by blood, extortion, falsehood, perjury, so you may have a pleasing recompense.
They start.
Start not aside, depart not from yourselves. I know your composition is as mine, of blood, extortion, falsehood, perjury, true branded with the mark of wickedness.
Be not so bitter. We are they indeed, that would deprive our fathers of their lives. So we were sure to have a benefit. I weigh no more the murdering of a child, dragged from the sucking bosom of his mother, than I respect to quaff a bowl of wine unto his health that dearly loved me.
But gold that rewardeth were apparent death. Before mine eyes, bold, hearty, visible, I'd wrestle with him for a deadly fall, or I would lose my guerdon promise. I'd hang my brother for to wear his coat, that all saw me might have cause to say, there is a heart more firm than adamant to practice execrable butcheries.
I know that well, for were I not assured of your performance in this enterprise, I would not open the closet of my breast to let you know my close intention. There is a little boy, an urchin lad, that stands between me and the glorious rays of my soul-wishing sun of happiness. There is a thicket 10 miles from this place, whose secret ambush and unused ways thus seem to join with our conspiracy. There, murder him. And when the deed is done, cast his dead body in some dirty ditch and leave him for the fowls to feed upon. Do this. Here is 200 marks in gold to hearten your resolution. 200 more after the deed is done. I'll pay you more for satisfaction.
Swooned her's rewards would make one kill himself to leave his progeny so rich a prize. Were 20 lives engaged for this coin, I'd end them all to have the money mine.
Who would not hazard life, nay, soul, and all for such a frank and bounteous paymaster? Splud, what labor is it to kill a boy? It is but thus, and then the task is done. It grieves me most that when this task is past, I'll have no more to occupy myself. 200 marks to give a paltry stab. I am impatient till I see the brat.
That must be done with cunning secrecy. I have devised to send the boy abroad with this excuse, to have him fostered in better manners than this place affords. My wife, though loath indeed to part with him, yet for his good she will forego her joy, with hope in time to have more firm delights, which she expects from young Pertillo's life.
Call you him Pertillo, faith, leave out the T.
Why so?
Because Pertillo will remain, for he shall surely perish if I live. What do you call the father of the child?
Why, man, he hath no father left alive.
Yes, such a father that doth see and know how we do plot this little infant's woe.
Why, then his little son is much to blame, that doth not keep his father company. When shall we have delivery of the boy?
Tomorrow morning by the break of day, and you must swear you'll see him safely brought unto the place that I do send him to.
That may we safely, for you mean to send him to the wood, and there his journey end. Both soul and limbs shall have a place to rest. In earth the last, the first in Abram's breast.
Come, gentlemen, this night go rest with me. Tomorrow end Pertillo's tragedy.
And they exit. I love the little stage direction of they start. What? Who? Us? No, we would never do anything bad in our lives. And just go, yeah, no, I know who you are. I just want to say, I really like his dialogue, but Fallerio speaks weird turns of phrase. There's something really interesting about the way some of his sentences are constructed, and just that they're so florid sometimes and so roundabout. Lay my heart's corrupted citadel wide open to your thoughts to look into. The boy stands between me and the glorious rays of my soul-wishing sun of happiness. I mean, there's something really, really odd. I really like it, but it seems to be a character thing. We have had odd little quirks in some of the other characters' dialogue, but there does seem to be something extra florid about Fallerio. Rachael?
No, I wonder if some of that is like, we have homicide and we have avarice, and homicide really seems to have been taken with Mary, and I wonder if Fallerio has been taken by avarice, because avarice seems to talk in a way that's more sophisticated or roundabout, like more manipulative, where that's what you really, I don't know, that's what that's the vibe I'm getting from Fallerio.
So maybe when homicide came in earlier with blood on them, it's literally the blood that Mary has spilt, and that there is a definite connection between homicide and avarice, and these two characters, Fallerio, inhabited by avarice. Oh yeah, I really like that. I think that's a really nice way of looking at it, and gives us options in terms of staging as well. That maybe that they are either puppet work or literally double, possibly as well. Yeah, really like that. Might be tricksy. I don't know what the turnaround between them sometimes is, but hey, we can make it work. Lynn?
Yeah, I don't remember Fallerio being quite so rhetorically decorative in his other scenes. I feel like this is new in this scene. So yeah, it is sort of something that you notice, that he's speaking so metaphorically. Maybe that's a way of kind of distancing himself from what what's about to happen, that indirectness that I think Rachael was talking about in one of the allegorical characters. But yeah, it's a thing. It's something that's going on in this scene.
I mean, Allenso had a bit of it last scene. There were some really odd little turns of phrase. I mean, Fallerio had some really nice lines in the last scene, but they were much more direct. They were much more pointed, even when it was trying to extend. But maybe that's more for a deep dive later on. But yeah, there's some really interesting sort of work going on in what the dialogue is doing on a sort of, line by line basis here that I'm finding really interesting. Eric.
I was going to say, yeah, but as soon as he settles on like, yeah, you're going to sort of drag him into the woods and kill him, and then you're going to toss him in a ditch, like that is pretty explicit. Like, there's no way you can go wrong with those instructions kind of thing. Clearly, he's been watching some other plays where, murders have gone wrong.
Yeah. Okay, we've got one short scene left to do this session before we go into final thoughts. So, Act 2, Scene 3, we return, we ping directly back to enter Mary and Rachael.
Sister, now all my gold-expected hopes of future good is plainly vanished, and in her stead grim-visaged despair hath ta'en possession of my guilty heart. Desire to gain began this desperate act, now plain appearance of destruction of soul and body waits upon my sin, although we hide our sins from mortal men, whose glass of knowledge is the face of man. The eye of heaven beholds our wickedness, and will no doubt revenge the innocent.
Do not so disconsolate yourself, nor add new streams of sorrow to your grief, which like a springtide overswelling the banks, least you do make an inundation, and so be borne away with swiftest tides of ugly fear and strong despairing thoughts. I am your sister, though a silly maid. I'll be your true and faithful comforter.
Rachael, I see thy love is infinite, and sorrow hath so borne my thoughts away that I had almost quite forgot myself. Help me, dear sister, to convey from hence the spectacle of inhumanity.
Whither would you convey this lump of dust, untimely murdered by your luckless hand?
To the low room, where we will cover it with faggots till the evening do approach. In the meantime, I will bethink myself how I may best convey it forth of doors. For if we keep it longer in the house, the savour will be felt throughout the street, which will betray us to destruction. Oh, what a horror brings this beastliness, this chief of sins, this self-accusing crime of murder. Now I shame to know myself, that am estranged so much from what I was. True, harmless, honest, full of courtesy. Now false, deceitful, full of injury. Hold thou his heels, I'll bear his wounded head. Would he did live, so I myself were dead.
And they bring down the body and cover it over with faggots himself.
Those little sticks do hide the murdered corse, but sticks nor aught besides can hide the sin. He sits on high, whose quick all-seeing eye cannot be blinded by man's subtleties.
Look everywhere. Can you discern him now?
Not with mine eye, but with my heart I can.
Ah, that is because thou knowest I laid him there. To guiltiness each thought begetteth fear. But go, my true, though woeful comforter, wipe up the blood in every place above, so that no drop be found about the house. I know all houses will be searched anon. Then burn the cloths with which you wipe the ground, that no apparent sign of blood be found.
I will. Oh, would to God I could as clearly wash your conscience from the deed, as I can cleanse the house from least suspect of murderous deed and beastly cruelty.
Cease to wish vainly. Let us seek to save our names, our fames, our lives, and all we have.
And lo, Rachael has now been thoroughly brought into the crime of joint enterprise as she helps to clear up the crime scene. Yes, we've got the crime scene cleanup. They're going in, they're cleaning up the blood. They're checking to see. And Mary's doing these cartwheels of 1 minute. Oh, I'm full of shame. I'm full of shame. Oh, can you see the body from there? Is it properly covered? Oh no, you just think you can see it because you know it's there, which is like whenever anyone cocks up on stage. It's all right. The audience don't notice because they don't know the play. That's that lovely delusion. But yeah, it's proper. You have this in almost every crime thing today. The crime scene cleanup. How do you get rid of the body? And we can assume at this point that they're from the upstairs space. They're bringing down some sort of prop. I'm assuming that the actor is not being utilised at this point. That it's just a dummy that's being hidden on stage underneath some piles of wood. Lynn.
Yeah, wasn't it Sherlock Holmes who said, "Murder is child's play. Getting rid of the body, that's the tricky part."
That's why it's so much easier to kill people in the countryside. He was always really down on the countryside because, there's so many good, easy ways of getting rid of bodies. Killing people in the city, that's really hard work. But,
Hard to get away with. Yeah.
Very hard to get away with. I don't think about this at all. Eric, then Rachael.
I was going to say that it's like, I find it interesting that Mary goes, I know all houses will be searched. And then, you burn the cloths that you're going to wipe the ground with. And I'm like, that is not subtle. I mean, sort of, your house is going to be searched. So, yeah. And also, technically speaking, the blood might have dried already.
We are pre-CSI, though.
Yes, the burden of proof is slightly different in terms of what you can, they don't need to worry about fingerprints, DNA. They just need to make sure you can't see the blood.
Or they can explain the blood. I killed a pig. It's
true.
But yeah, Rachael is now fully involved. Rachael can't back out of this now because she's actively involved in the clean out.
And it's getting more like Arden of Faversham.
In what way?
The hiding of the body. Okay, it's a long time since we read Arden of Faversham, and there have been an awful lot of plays in between. But I seem to remember that the hiding of the body was quite a business.
But tonally, there's such different plays, though.
Oh, yes.
Arden is funny, frequently blackly comic, whereas I'm not sure this is. I mean, I'm sure it could be. I'm sure because it's so over the top. But I don't think that's the intent in the way that Arden had. Rachael.
Just how cold-blooded Mary is. Any comfort that, he's, pretending to give, it just seems so put on. And it's very much like the first scene where we had the two of them and he's like, telling her to clean up the place, that he just sees his sister, I think, as also, somebody to do practical things. Like he's just given such serial killer vibes, even if they didn't have that term back then. This is like the thought process that he doesn't really see other people as people. And then at the end to say, cease to wish vainly, after he's been coveting all these other people's things, is I don't know. Is that what irony is?
Yeah, it's that thing of the question of his motivation. I think avarice is actually you're right in the sense that avarice is a red herring with Mary. That's not the real reason this stuff is happening. It's homicide. It's pure and simple homicide. It's there's something seriously serial killing about him, in that sense that he's doing things for reasons he's not wholly sure of. It's just the kind of thing that he now does. Helen, were you waiting?
Yeah, he does worry me because it's a question of his sanity. How sane is he? Does he go in and out of sanity? His rationale to himself is avarice, but on the other hand, he gains nothing by these murders. I mean, he's not he's not Beech's heir.
No.
He's not proposing to rob the shop. This was envy rather than avarice. And yet, I mean, he has flashes of sanity. He also has flashes of remorse, but they don't last very long.
But is it remorse or is it just fear of being caught, which is not quite the same thing?
No, I felt there was a point at which I felt that he'd suddenly got an insight into what he was doing. I mean, it is absolutely fascinating the way we do get his interiority. We get all his thought processes coming out one after another. They're not there's no logic, there's no humanity, but it's there for the audience to see.
Yeah, it's more like a strange stream of consciousness rather than a fully, sense of actually who he is. It's just at every single moment we're getting a slightly different take on who he is.
Whereas with the Italian, he explains himself at great length and very fully, but it's not on the same. It's not the same sort of explanation. It's with Mary, it's raw, whereas with the Italian, it's considered.
Well, especially as he's not planning on doing it himself. He's outsourcing the job.
Well, this is.
It's money. It's money, and he's just going to separate himself from the deed, or at least he's going to try to. Okay, we're into extra time. Final thoughts from around the room. I have to say I feel very bad, but I am enjoying this. I don't think it makes me a good person, but there's something really, darkly enjoyable about this, and that maybe isn't a good thing. True crime has a if. I don't think it quite fully functions as a true crime because of the nature of where the sources have come from. I think it is based on true stories, but I don't think it has a particularly direct link from specific materials in that quite the same way as Arden had. I think it's based on ballads, so it's not quite as detailed. I think the sources in terms of where this stuff comes from. Anyway, thoughts from around the room, final thoughts. Elizabeth, any final thoughts?
Yeah, I was just thinking about what you just said, Rob, about I was thinking about those pamphlets with the sensational stories about murders that have taken place in the countryside and characters that kind of jump off the page. And I was thinking that the way the murders take place in this narrative are really engaging. I think that this text would work really well in a very kind of Brechtian style, in a very sort of pared back, with not that much props or not that many. I could imagine the characters dragging a body that we can't see on stage. I think that it would work very, very well for an ensemble, and it would work very well for actors. I think the play, we don't know about its performance history, but I think it's a very performative text. I love the balance of these two-handers, these monologues, and these ensemble pieces. I think that there's a very good balance there.
Alan, any final thoughts?
I'm not quite sure what to make of it. I think Rachel's suggestion earlier that Avarice is doubled with the in the Italian plot and Homicide in the English plot would make some sense. It'd be worth having a look through to see whether there's clashes that will make that awkward. I mean, I can see that this would probably have been a good bums on seats or feet in the staged area, you know, simply on the grounds of the amount of gore and spectacle that you could do with it. But I'm not quite sure what the heck it's trying to do. It'll be interesting to see how it develops over the next 2/3.
Well, what does the average episode of Inspector Morse try to do? Or Taggart. This is probably more Taggart, thinking about it, for those who has ever seen that one. Slightly more gory. Anyway, but you know, any Seven, you know, any serial killery murderiness. Rachael, any final thoughts?
I think it's interesting that we have the English plot is so unhinged and the Italian plot is so ungory and composed. I don't know, maybe I was just expecting that one to be, you know, the Italian one where you would get all the more passionate type stuff, the more anger and the more I guess brutal stuff that we've instead got with Mary. I'm worried for Rachael and I'm worried for Avarice because I feel like hanging out with Homicide and a serial killer won't end well for either of them. But this is doing a lot of interesting things, and I want to know where it's going to go.
Yeah. Lynn, any final thoughts?
Yeah, the similarities and the contrasts are really interesting. We have this, you know, initially that greed, covetousness, malice, envy, you know, seem to be operational in both stories, but Mary's tale is kind of diverging. And I don't know, my guess, not that it's important, but my guess is that, you know, the author is trying, groping around to look for motivations and stuff for Mary and isn't really very able to do it. But in the process, he sort of creates this impression of a very psychologically disturbed human being that he can't really figure out whether he feels guilty or not, or why he's doing it. So I kind of feel like the author's inability to create a sort of consistent story for Mary happens to like make him a lot more interesting.
Yeah, I have to say, you know, it's really doing interesting work. I'm really, I'd say, enjoying this. I mean, I appreciate that it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea, considering how grim and brutal it has been so far. But I'm liking what Yarington's doing with this play. And so many different textual things are going on, as well as other things as well. Eric, any final thoughts?
I was trying to remember, you know, think of things that are similar to this, and the only thing I can think of is like One of Us, Agatha Christie, or, you know, or any of her books, which is sort of, I don't know, like we know who the murderer is, but we kind of, like, it's so gruesome, it kind of oversteps the boundaries of everything, I guess. I don't know, just it's interesting to read, and well, having read the both victims, Beech and Winchester is kind of, it's very, very quick. Like, you know, you're told that there are going to be murders, and then like in the next scene or two that they're enacted. which is quite rare for an early modern play, I guess. You could like picture this as sort of like I don't know, like a good play to put on like for the launch night of crime, crime literature festival or something, where it would totally work. Or yeah.
Helen, any final thoughts?
Yes, I'm rather startled to find how much of the play we've still got to go. I mean, so much has occurred, and there is John Nettles just about to arrive in. Well, no, it's as bad as anywhere in Midsummer, but it's obviously the law and order was not the same. But I mean, I really haven't a clue what's going to happen next. That's one. And two, I think you say it isn't based on a particularly well-known source.
Well, the sources I've got, or the notes I've got here, is the murder of Beech by Merry on the 23rd of August, 1594. So I'm assuming that's real, but it's not actually 100% clear. And the other plot is a version, though here with an Italian setting, of The Babes in the Wood, on which a ballad with a Norfolk setting was licensed in 1595. So there's a ballad which is set in Norfolk, which has now been transferred to Italy for reasons that escape me. But that's all I've got on that. So I'm assuming that the murder of Beech is a real thing that happened on the 23rd of August, 1594, and that's not just simply inferred from the play. It might be inferred from that date. Might be inferred from the play. Seems to be no mention of court other things, which normally you find with this kind of thing.
Because true crime was generally circulated through ballads. In the absence of tabloid press, the broadsheets and the ballads did the job. So I was going to comment on the choice of the name of Merry. But if it's taken from the source, then it's taken from the source. It just seems to be such an interesting choice of name.
This play is not afraid of irony.
Yeah.
That's the advantage of having these two figures at the beginning, is to, ramp up the ironies from the very top. Isn't Merry a nice chap? Isn't he lovely? Oh, he's a respectable citizen. Of course he is. He won't murder anyone. Sorry, Helen, I stepped over you. Any additional thoughts?
No, I finished.
Okay. Any other thoughts from the room anyone wants to throw in before I close the session? We've got 1 minute or so to go. Eric?
When we started the play, because Helen mentioned Mary's name, I thought Mary was going to be sort of like, Mary Greek from, Ralph Royster Doyster, like the darker side of him, or like, something like that. But he's just completely unrelated, because he kind of, you could do a sort of Jekyll and Hyde thing there, but yeah, no, maybe that's just me.
And he's young, which is, of course, for psychosis, he's probably about the right age.
It's the fact that he has absolutely no reason to be discontented, and it's his opening gambit is to say, "I live in mean and discontented state, but wherefore should I think of discontent?" Because everyone likes him. He's got a lovely house. He's got a pretty house.
Yeah,
very important. A pretty house, a loving sister, and a careful man. He's doing all right, and yeah, maybe a bit murdery, But if it is,
psychosis, I would say,
it is that logic of the problem of when you're basing something on real events, or at least versions of real events, is, and we have this with history plays as well. How do you match up a motivation with, and now this thing has to happen? Because sometimes you just don't have time, or you're not given a decent enough motivation for the action that you're trying to present. And it's a really interesting, structural problem of how do you do real life things if you don't have that many details. Because sometimes the story you get given is just, and now this happens, and you go, why? me? And the playwright has to come up with a reason, and sometimes they just don't try. Rachael, very briefly. Eric, very briefly.
No, I mean, Mary just seems to be tying up loose ends, which is why I'm afraid for like other people that are around him. I feel like that, like if this is based off a true story, that's probably, you know, what the guy was doing, and it just got more and more out of hand, because I don't know. Yeah, he murdered more and more people.
Well, yeah, because what we've got left to go is, of course, obviously the other body has to be found at some point, presumably, and, you know, he's got to be at court, and obviously the other murder hasn't happened yet in the other plot. So there's still quite a long way to go with things. There's a body underneath the wood in the woodshed. There's something nasty in the woodshed. Eric.
I was just gonna say, because like usually we talk about how we're gonna stage things, so on and so forth. How would they have staged the what's it called like leaving the hammer in his head? Because obviously, okay, you don't see it, but then it's written in as a stage direction as well. So yeah.
Well, presumably, I won't. We'll come into this tomorrow. That's not too much of a spoiler. There, I don't think at that point in the action, that's something that we need to worry about in acting, but it may be an important thing for later events. Well, it's been fun so far with this. So all that remains is to thank all the witnesses in this particularly gory joint enterprise. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye.
Bye.
What labour is to kill a boy.